So I was going through my video history and I noticed I didn't show you guys how to change an alternator in an SRX. I'm halfway done with this job, but let me show you what I got done so far. Alright, so the alternator, from our previous tensioner video, you know the alternator lives down there. Alright, in order to get the alternator out, you got to pull the cooling fans. They sit right here. Okay, you got to pull this hose to get to the bolt down here that's actually resting down there by the ABS module. If you don't pull this hose, you're not going to get to that bolt. Then you got two bolts on this side, one here and one down there that you take out to get the cooling fans out. But oh wait, there's more. Every one of these here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, all those have bolts in them that go into the cooling fans. You have to take every one of those bolts out. They're sitting up there. Okay, I moved them so that I could shut the hood. Okay, you got to take this line loose. That's this one right here. Okay, got to take this line loose and flip it over in order to get the cooling fans out, because you can't get the cooling fans out because this hose here rests along the top of the cooling fans. So best thing to do is to drain the radiator. However, I didn't drain the radiator. It kind of drained itself, but it only drained it down below this point right here. So I put a plug on it here to keep it from draining everywhere. On the belt side of things, I took the belt off the harmonic balancer, but you don't have to do that. All you have to do to get the alternator belt off is just pull the tensioner down here, and then you can pull the belt off the front of the alternator. The alternator itself has 3 attachment points. It's got 2 up top that go up in here, which you'll see in a minute because I'm going to show you the wheel well, and then 1 in the bottom. So you have a long bolt and a short bolt that goes in the top. Okay, I believe they're long and short bolt. They might be the same size bolt. No, they're the same size bolt. You got to take the front bolt out to get to the back bolt, and then when you put it back together, which I'll show you how to do that, you got to put the back bolt in to get the front bolt in. It's confusing as hell. All right, so then after you get the top tore apart, and this is what it looks like when the top's tore apart, you got to jack the car up, take the front tire off. You got to pull this plastic shroud off, which sits right in this general area right here, and you'll see it when we put it back together. You got to pull this ground stud, and this is the bottom bolt. All your bolts are 15 millimeter except for this one. This one's a 13, and you need a deep socket to get it out. Okay, so let me show you what it looks like under here. All right, so you got your lower mount right here. That's your lower mount. All right, this is your wiring. On your wiring, you have a field stator wire, which sits up here in the top. You can't see it from here, but you got a field stator wire up in there, and you got your B positive wire up in here also. All right, you can probably see the B positive right there. This and then your field stator wire sits just above it. It's a 2 wire field wire. So that's a push and pull. And then you got a 10 millimeter nut on the back of the alternator that holds the B positive wire. And that's it. So we're going to get the alternator out because it's a brand new alternator. I put it in back in November, and it has already failed. So either it was manufacturer defect, which I believe it to be, or the belt was no good. But it worked fine when I put it on, so that's what you get with the aftermarket. So let me get the alternator out and I'll show it to you here. You see, here's all my parts. Yeah, see, here's your air tube with your emissions line. This is for another job I'm doing. Here's your alternator right here. set it on the table for you before I get ready to take it to get it exchanged. All right, so your alternator sits like this inside the car, okay? So when you're looking at it from the front, you got this slide right here that your front bolt sits in, and then your other bolt fits in the back, which is also a slide. So usually the purpose behind the slide is to give you some room to pull the bolt out in case you don't have any room to do anything with. Then down here you have a ground stud that's part of the alternator, and then you got your lower mounting bolt. This is your field wire right here, goes to your internal regulator. This is your B positive. Some models, they have a ground on the alternator, which would be on that grounding stud. This one doesn't, so I don't have to worry about a ground wire. However, if you wanted to hook a ground wire to it, you could. It takes like a 13mm nut. But anyway, this is what the alternator looks like. And my understanding is the STS and the SRX are the only two vehicles that use this alternator. If you have a DTS or a DeVille or any other Cadillac, it uses a different alternator and is a completely different setup. But anyhow, that's the beginning of the video for alternator. So unfortunately I can't show you how I took it out, but I can show you how it goes back in. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to put the alternator back in this SRX, and then I've got some other jobs I need to do on it, which will be a separate video. Alright, so we just got back from the parts store. Here's our new alternator. As you can see, it's different in that it's got the ratings on it and everything like that. The other one didn't. Same part number. So we got that, and the pulley's black, which, you know, the other one was silver. I don't know what that's got to do with anything. So there's our regulator there. I'll get this over to the cart. Now there's two ways you can put this on. You can put it on putting the bolt through the bottom first, or you can put it on holding it up with the bolt in the top. We're going to do the bolt bottom method because it's just easiest for me. Alright, so let me get you in here where you can see what we're doing here. Alright, so right there is our install hole right there. It's underneath this cable right here. Can't really see it too well unless I scooch up a little bit. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is we need to hook up the B positive lead. So your B positive lead goes on here. Alright, so this is the back of your alternator. Your B positive goes here. And then that's your regulator wire or your field stator wire for you old timers. Do not hook this up till you have all three bolts in, because that's a very small wire and you'll break it if you try to put it in while you're hooking up the other wires. Another thing too is there's supposed to be, because I remember from the last time I did this job, there's supposed to be one of these Christmas tree retainers that you can pull off to where you can pull the wiring down to give you some extra room to get this B positive hooked up. For the life of me, I can't find it. So you want to verify your socket and everything before you put this together. That way you can get this together as easy as possible. Alright, so set your alternator. Alright, you're going to take your alternator, and I'm going to set you this way. Here's the shock right here. Your spindle is over here in the far corner. Take your alternator, pulley side down, feed it in between the shock and the brake hose, just like that. See that? And then you're going to set your alternator pulley side down on the frame rail so that you can get your B positive hooked up. And then after you get your B positive hooked up, then we can rotate the alternator and get it mounted to the car. So your B positive wire is up here out of sight. It's right here in my hand. So I'm going to try to show this to you without giving you a whole bunch of arm. It is a little bit of a tight quarters in here. That and I'm going to have to pull that wiring up from the top. So give me just 1 second. I need to pull that B positive wire up from the bottom. I need to pull that rubber grommet back so I can get the wire on there, because otherwise you're going to be fighting that thing the whole time and it just makes the whole day go so much slower. So give me just 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so what I had to do was on the ringlet, I think you can see it now, right down here, this is your B positive right here. It's got this rubber cover that goes over it. What you have to do is you have to pull that up from the front of the car where you can get on it with a pair of pliers. Hold the ringlet with the pliers and then wiggle the cover back so that you're able to get to the wire, and then you can go ahead and install your wiring. So let's scoot this up, and if it sits, this thing's going to do all sorts of crazy stuff, so you know, you just got to kind of live with it for a minute. All right, and then you got to kind of get a feel for which way this wiring goes. I think it goes, well, let's see if you do it the way that they suggest you do it. Turn it sideways, and then you can slide the wire on the back like that. Hold it with your thumb while you get your nut, and then you take your nut, put it in your hand, hold the alternator and the wire with the other hand and thumb, and get your nut started. Try not to rest your arm that you're putting the nut on your brake hose, because you know, you don't need to put any stress on the brake hose. Run this nut down by hand as far as you can go, and then tighten it the rest of the way with your ratchet. Providing that your ratchet functions like it's supposed to. Alright, and then at this point you can go ahead and take that cover, pull the cover down over the end of the, see, sometimes it doesn't want to go over. See, and that's what it looks like. You got your B positive hooked up to the back here. You probably can't see a whole lot because of where the camera's at. Let me see if I can raise you up a little bit higher so you can see above the electrical here. Because this is actually, there we go, that's more like it. There we go. A little hard to get camera positions on this thing when, alright, so now you're lined up. You can see what we're doing. We got our B positive hooked up over here on the other side of this wire. See, our B positive's hooked up. Now we gotta rotate this. Alright, see, here's the other thing I gotta let you know of. Don't tighten that wire up until you got it mounted to the car. Because if you do, you end up doing what we just did, which is getting the wire in the wrong position. So you gotta kind of pick the insulator back up, loosen the nut back up just a little bit so that wire will rotate. And you can tighten this up with it mounted to the car, so don't worry about that part. It's just a little bit more of a confinement, that's all. See, because you got to have the nut loose so that the wire will allow the alternator to rotate. Otherwise, you're not going to get it up in the vehicle. All right, so we got that. All right, we got to rotate our alternator. We got to set it up. And this part's a pain in the neck to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move you over here. I'm going to move you over here so you can get the best view on this, because this is going to be a job. All right, so you can see the alternator. Alternator's right there. All right, and the way you want to do this is you want to set it up in position. Have your bolt ready to go. So as you're holding it with one hand, you're going to feed the bolt through with the other. It's going to go something like this. All right. I've done this both ways. All right, so hang on a minute. I'm going to have to take this up top side. So I'm going to move you up top and I'm going to show you how to do it from the top. Alright, I kind of got you up where you can see a little bit. Our alternator's down here. So we got to get the back bolt in to hold it in place, and then we can get back underneath it and put the bottom bolt in. So this is how we do that. We'll pick our alternator up. I'm just going to kind of bring it up. Kind of bring it up here. Hold it. It's a bit of a job, let me tell you. Put your bolt through first. We got to get the back bolt in, so we got to do the back bolt. Now, if you want to get the front bolt in first to hold it in place, and then get the back bolt in, you can do that. That's how I've done it before. You got to find the hole, and then you got to pick the alternator up. Okay, and then we can put the front bolt in first, just to get it to where I can get the bottom bolt in. When you get the bottom bolt in, it'll hold the alternator in place so that you don't have to worry about this part. You only want to get a few threads in, just enough to hold the alternator up. Alright, so we got that done. I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so this is what that looks like. I got the front bolt in. See? So that holds the alternator in while we get underneath and put the bolts in the bottom. And then we'll come back up, we'll pull that bolt back out. Well, I don't think we need to. We could probably get the back bolt in too if we wanted to. We'll try it and see what happens. Alright, so let's get you back on the ground over here. Get you back on the ground over here so you can see what we're doing here. We're going to get the lower bolt in. Now the lower bolt, you're going to have to build a contraption. Let me show you what I mean by that, because it's going to be, you got to get past that big wiring loom right there. You can see the alternator real good right there. Alright, so let me show you how this part works. Alright, so let me get you right there. Okay, you see that big wiring loom sitting right here? Our bolt goes through right there. Alright, so in order to get that bolt in, you got to build this long contraption, okay? Basically, you take every single extension that you own, and a few that you borrow from your friend, and you take this bolt, and because it's loose, you got to feed it. You can put the bolt in by hand. You can put the bolt in by hand, okay? But you got to line it up with the hole, and then you feed the bolt through like this. And what you want to do is you want to hold the bolt steady until you feel it hit the hole, and then you want to try to turn it a couple times. There it goes. I had to pick up a little bit on the back of the alternator to get it to fit in. But then you want to make sure that you don't cross thread the bolt, because you're going into an aluminum housing. So you want to just kind of make sure you can spin it in with your fingers. We've got positive engagement, so we can go ahead and put our long contraption on. Now, I recommend going underneath the wiring, because it's more of a straight shot. You can go through the top if you have a swivel. I just do it through the bottom because it's easier for me. And then you get your wrist saver, as they call it here. This is mine. Of course, you've seen it before. And you put it on the back of your little device here, and you zip this sucker down. Do not tighten it up yet. Alright, don't tighten it up yet, because we got to get that back bolt in on the top. Okay, so that's what it looks like so far. Alright, let's go back to the top, and we'll get the other bolt in from the top, and then we can tighten our bolts up. So let me move you back to the top here. I'm going to try to get you a really good spot this time, so you can see what we're doing. it's okay. All right, you can see the alternator now. All right, I got you zoomed in so you can see what we're doing. All right, so we got our top bolt in. We're going to leave that bolt in. We're going to try to do the back bolt now. Back bolt goes directly behind the front bolt, obviously. And there's a slot, if you remember, there's a slot in the back of the alternator, so you can slide this in. Now, the bottom bolt lines up the back bolt, so you can get the back bolt in now. But like we did on the bottom, you want to hand tighten it up so that you can get it, make sure that you're not cross-threading. And then we can go ahead and tighten those two bolts up now, but we can't use the ratcheting wrench on that one. We have to use a hand ratchet on that one because the ratcheting wrench won't fit in there. So, take your long handle ratchet like I got right here, and you go in the back, and you tighten this bolt up. Now if you find yourself having problems tightening this bolt up in the back, take the front bolt out, because now that you got the back bolt and the bottom bolt in, if you need extra room, you can take the front bolt out. You can be able to get this back bolt tightened up. Alright, so before we tighten up the back bolt, let's tighten up the front bolt. The front bolt, you're going to have to go with your short ratchet. Of course, if you want to use the short ratchet for both bolts, you can. Probably give you more room to turn it with. But we can spin this front one in by hand until it gets to the end where it goes up against the alternator. Then we can tighten it up with the ratchet. Alright, so we want to tighten this up now. Alright, tighten this bolt up. I think it's 37 foot-pounds if you can try to get a torque wrench down in here, but I don't do that, so we're okay. Now this back bolt, you're going to have to kind of maneuver it around to get your ratchet on it, because this offset kind of creates a little bit of a problem getting this back bolt tightened up. It is possible. Just got to kind of hold your ratchet on there with one hand and tighten it down with the other. Get this one nice and snug as well. Alright, that one's tight. And then this one should be double check your bolts when you tighten them up. Make sure that they didn't back out when you tightened up the other one. Alright, so at this point we can go ahead and put our field wire on, which is that little 2-wire. Just reach up under here, locate your field wire, and then find your plug, plug it in. You'll hear it click in a minute. Maybe. There it goes. You gotta hear it click. There it is. Field wire's installed. Alright, so we need to get back underneath and get that bottom bolt tightened up. Tighten that bolt up. After you get your socket back off your other ratchet. That's kind of important. Now you see why we have to have this long ratchet setup, is because of the space you have. They don't give you much room to do much with on this one. So you just got to kind of go with what you got. Now, there we go. All right, and then you take your socket off, you take your ratchet off, back it off to where you got one extension left on it. We're going to take the big ratchet and tighten it down. You're going to take your big ratchet, put it on there like that, and you're just going to make sure it's tight. All right, that one's nice and tight. Now we're going to switch over to the 13 socket. We're going to go with the deep 13. We're going to put that ground stud back in. You don't have to get elaborate with the ground stud because there's a lot of room for you to see. There's a lot of room for you to move around, so. All right, moving on. Ground stud. I'm gonna put it in this hole right here. As I was saying before it disappeared, make sure you take that out of the alternator when you go to exchange the alternator, because you do not get another one. There is a reason for it being here, otherwise it wouldn't be here. All right, that one's fitting a little tight. Might be just the threads got some garbage in them. Yeah, threads are the right pitch, so it might be okay. So let's go ahead and get this thing installed. You got to pick up just like you did on the other one. Get your socket up in there. Yep, it was just a burr, not too big. Just tighten this down. Like I said, some cars, they have a wire attached to this ground stud. Others, like this one, they don't. You got to have this in there. It doesn't bolt onto anything on the car. It just attaches itself to the alternator to give you an extra grounding point. You got to have it though. So, if you're thinking about deleting it, I would recommend you didn't. Because, you know, there's people that like to delete stuff off of cars. All right, good deal. That's the bottom of your alternator. Pretty simple. All right, so now we got to get back up on the top. We got to get our belt installed and get our belt system fixed, and then we can get the cooling fans put in. Now, what I'm going to suggest that you do, and it's exactly what I'm going to do here in a minute, take the extra time and take that bottom skid plate off. You're going to be doing yourself a whole world of favors, trust me, because all those lines, they're transmission cooler lines, most of them. I think there's a transmission cooler line under there and a power steering pump line. Get your face in the right direction here. Those have to be secured to something or they're going to bounce around and you're going to have problems. So it's just best that you take the cover off, crawl underneath, tighten all of them up underneath, and then that's it. That's how you do that. We got to get down here before we get too far involved and get this bolt back. This is our lower cooling fan bolt. It fell down there. So, all right, so we're getting our belt installed. So let me go grab my breaker bar. If you watched the tensioner video and you still don't understand how this works, I'm about to show you how this works. Make sure you're in frame here. All right, our tensioner is down here. This is our belt that we just installed. So make sure it's on the back pulley. Take your breaker bar, put it in the hole, push down, far down as you can go. Far down as you can go. Make sure it's not caught up on any surrounding bolts or anything like that. Make sure it rides along the top of the tensioner. And you got to make sure that it's in the harmonic balancer too, because it'll want to walk on you. You just put your belt on. It usually goes on a lot easier than this, but for some reason it wants to be a problem today. I got the tensioner all the way to the bottom too. It won't go no further. I wonder if my belt's jammed up. All right. Alternatively, if you want to, you can do this. you can get it, try to get it on the alternator first and then put it on the harmonic balancer. But this one, for some reason, wants to be an increasingly huge pain in my butt. So this is how we handle pains in the butt here. Put it around the alternator, put it around the tensioner, push the tensioner all the way down. Okay. While holding the belt in position, get it on the harmonic balancer. Make sure it does not come off the alternator. You have to do some kind of funky ninja stuff, then do your funky ninja stuff. And you gotta push down some more, and then get this part up on the back pulley, like this. And there you go, there's your belt. Now you notice that the belt's not on the tensioner, not a problem. There you go, you're on your tensioner now. Check your belt, make sure that you're inside all your grooves. Make sure it's not gonna fall off. And that belt is done. Okay, now we gotta get the main belt on. For that, you're gonna need a half drive breaker bar or a half drive ratchet. So I'm gonna go grab mine and I'll be right back. All right, I got my big bar here. All right, so this is your main belt tensioner here, half drive, okay? So what I did was I took the belt off the harmonic balancer and just kind of pushed it to the side. When you do this job, you don't have to mess with the front belt. You just have to get the back belt loose. So what I have to do now is I have to get the belt back on. But this belt here, it's double-sided groove, okay? It's a very interesting looking belt. So I'm gonna get my pulleys in position. I'm gonna get it wrapped around the water pump. I'm going to pull it off of the idler first because the whole smaller pulley crap. Okay. So let me get my ratchet in position here. All right, you want to get your ratchet in position. Just kind of hang on to it for just a second. Make sure you get your belt or it's not going to get bound up. And this thing's got a lot of tension on it, so you're going to have to pull hard. So grab it, you pull back as hard as you can. Get the bottom around the harmonic balancer, pop top around there. Now sometimes you're going to have a pulley walk on you. This time we didn't, so it actually went together really easy. But the other day I did this job and my AC pulley was giving me grief. So you want to take your hand, run it around all your pulleys, make sure that your belt is inside all your grooves, including your tensioner. We'll wrap around everything, make sure everything is good. All right, our belt is on. Now, we can put our cooling fans in. All right, here's the thing you want to take note of. To do this job right, and this is the way I'm going to do it, this pan down here has to come off. It's a skid plate. It's held in place, I believe, by plastic clips. Let me get under here real quick and look. I think it's held in by plastic clips and maybe a couple bolts. Yeah, we got two 10mm bolts and a bunch of plastic clips. So we're gonna move our drain pan, and I'm gonna go grab my, we got a Christmas tree there. Put that back in. So I need to go get my trim tool. I'm gonna show you how this works too. So give me just a second to get set up and I'll be right with you. And I'm gonna zoom back out all the way here. Go back to 0. Okay. There's a bolt there and there's a matching bolt on the other side. And then you've got all those you gotta pull. You got 2 over here you gotta pull. And then there's 2 on the other side you gotta pull. There's that one back there. And then there's one up in here that I dropped out. It was a Christmas tree on this car, but it's probably gonna be one of these rivets here. Plastic rivets. All right, so we're gonna take our tool. We're gonna reach up here and we're gonna pull that down just like that. Grab the top of the panel, pull it down, set it over to the side. You're going to do that all 500,000 times that you got to do this. Leave the bolts for last. That way this thing doesn't fall on your head. So we want to get this skid plate out so that we can get to the cooling fan bolts in the bottom, and then we can put the skid plate back in. Skid plate's real easy to reinstall. That's why I don't mind doing it this way. That one's a little bit sketchy. Of course, we got our jack in the way over here, so we're going to have to kind of work around our jack a little bit. Sometimes you can grab them by your fingers and pull them out that way too. This one you can't, but you know, normally you could. And if you're going to be doing this job, and you know you're going to be doing this job, and you're not going to be like, oh, I got to put an alternator in my SRX. You know, kind of like, wish I'd have known about that. You can always do this as part of your prep work. It's what I wish I should have done beforehand, but I work on so many cars, I just don't remember how they come apart. You know, I don't remember if I had to take a piece off or something. So, you know, that, and you only remember the ones that you had the most trouble with, is what I've found out. This one's not been that bad. I haven't seen it too much this year. Now, there's a DTS that I work on that we've done a lot of videos on. That one I see a lot. I don't know why. Which, by the way, it's coming back. It's probably going to need a throttle body because it's dying on him every time he comes to a stop sign. I did a cleaning on it earlier in the season. It seemed to do the job, but here lately it just wants to give him problems. So I'm going to be doing that probably here shortly. But I got to get this clip out of here. And it's a good idea to do like I'm doing, to put all your clips in a pile. Because that way, if you got all your clips in a pile, you know where they're at, and you're not hunting for them. So here's our cooling fans. They sit just like this underneath, inside this space we're about to install this. All them little connectors, they plug on here, okay? That's why you got to have the skid plate off so that you can crawl under there and get these. You can get at them from the top, but there's very little space to work, and you can't pull this up and out until every bolt is removed. Now, I'm not going to recommend that you leave these bolts out because you need these bolts. These hold your lines securely to your vehicle, and removing them just because it's a damn inconvenience is unacceptable in this case. You have to put these in. So enough talking, let's get to work. All right, take your cooling fans. Since you didn't see how these come out, I'm going to show you how they go back in, and then you can figure out how they get out. So take it, slide it down. These actually go in better than the DTS cooling fans do, and it surprises me. All right, you got to move some of your lines out of the way. This one does not have, at least I don't believe it does, it does not have a spot that it hangs onto. It just kind of sits down in there like that. Then you take a couple of your bolts. You have black colored bolts and you have gray colored bolts. The gray colored bolts hold the cooling fans to the radiator. The black colored bolts you're going to take underneath the car with you to put your lines onto. So you just got to line up your holes in your radiator, get your bolts started. Don't get them tightened down till you got the mounting bolts in position. So you just want to kind of just go along. See, these are the gray colored bolts. These go in the bottom here. You got 4 bolts to hold this together. Make sure that you don't get your electrical caught up in here too, because I've done that before. And then you have to take it all apart to get your electrical out. So you gotta reach down in here. You take this, and if your top bolt's lined up right, the bottom bolt usually goes in pretty easily. Except on this one it doesn't want to. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's real nice. Oh, that's because I was putting it in the wrong bolt hole. Alright, you gotta put it down in there. There's another hole on the bottom of this cooling fan. You gotta make sure not to use that hole. You gotta go down a little bit further. And you get this bolt started. And then you can take your ratcheting wrench or your big ratchet, whatever you want to use, and zip these bolts down in. Make sure you get all 4 bolts in before you do that, because sometimes you have to pick up on this side to get the bolts to go in. You can't do that if it's tightened down. Bottom bolt goes in first on the passenger side. Let me show you over here. Bottom bolt goes in first on the passenger side. You got to go underneath where the radiator hose goes. Pull your cooling, your clip up. And it's right down here. It's very bottom. You gotta go right above the ABS module. And see, like I was telling you before, you gotta pick up on this side to get this bolt to go in. Otherwise, you won't get it in. Get that in a few threads, make sure it's in all the way, and then you can go ahead and put the top bolt in. Now we're not going to do a final charge analysis on this car until the drive shaft's in. That's going to be the next video, is a drive shaft video. So we got all of our mounting bolts in. We can go ahead, take our 10mm, tighten them down. So we'll go ahead and we'll tighten up our bolts here. Reach down here and get this one down here. And get this side done. This side's down in the bottom, way down in the bottom. I don't know if I'll be able to hit my trigger from up here. There's our spot. Does help if you get the bolt. Oh, looks like the bolt fell out. Gonna have to go back under there and get it. All right, well, I'm gonna mess with this, and then I'll bring you back when we're just about done here. All right, I got the cooling fans installed. All the bolts are back in it. Pro tip, if you want to use the skid plate method and get under there and do it, pull the lower radiator hose up and out of the way, because then that'll give you the room you need to get in there with your bolts. So we got that done. We got to hook up our radiator. So this hose here goes on down there, and you're going to need a pair of pliers to navigate that way. So that goes on right down here. Make sure you connect your cooling fans so you don't forget. You have a cooling fan issue, make sure you clip them back in while you got the opportunity to. So, all right, so we got to put our upper hose back on down here, or I guess you'd call that a mid hose. So let's scoot this sucker down, and we can get it on. Pick your cooling fan wire goes above the hose, and then just take your pliers. Now these aren't going to do it. I'm going to have to get me different pliers. Be just right back. You want to use some slip jaws. All right. You get down here on your spring clip. Get your spring clip pulled back. You might want to get like that, and then just kind of figure out where we got to be on our slide here. And grab a hold of your clamp here. And pull back on your hose clamp. Now if it doesn't slide back, you're just going to have to hold it open while you put it on the car. It just slides back on just like this. Try not to lose grab on that clamp. Just kind of just rock it back and forth till it gets on there all the way. And then release your clamp. Alright, hose is on, routed correctly. You don't want to route it behind this hose because you'll cause a crimp. You just want a natural bend down to it, just like it came off. There's a stop on the end of your radiator hose. You want to make sure that you take it to the stop. All right, then we got this little midget hose here we got to put back on. So there's some hold downs on top of your air breather. You got to put it inside those hold downs. There's a hold down right here. You got to put it inside this hold down too. That goes inside the cooling fan. Take our little nipple off of here that we installed. And you want to push it down through here, get it inside this little area too. Put that on your radiator. Alright, and then you take your nipple off. You want to tighten that clamp down, so you're going to go ahead and grab it with your pliers and slide that clamp forward. Just like this. That's done. The radiator's done. We got to put our air intake back on. So you can use a 5/16 socket or an 8mm to do this with, whichever you have available. And put our air intake back on like this. There we go. Make sure your notches line up down here on your air cleaner. And you got a hose down here you got to plug in, so you want to get this hose plugged in. You can run it this way. Works fine. Snaps back on. Then you take your little ratchet that you just had in your hand like 2 seconds ago, and you tighten down your clamps here. And then last thing we need to do is hook up our battery and put some coolant back in the system. Now, if you saved all your coolant and you don't have to recycle it, I would put it back in. I did a video a few years back about building a screen for your funnel. If you watch that video and you still have your screen, put that together and go ahead and filter your antifreeze into it. If you didn't watch the video but you want to know how that works, I just basically took a piece of storm door screen or window screen or some type of fine mesh screen, put it in the bottom of one of my funnels, and then I just pour the fluid through that and it funnels it out really nice. So we got to hook our battery back up. Over here, hook our battery back up. You might hear some strange noises like the DTS. When the battery hooks up, it makes a beep noise. Totally normal. And we're not gonna, like I said, we're not gonna test charge. We're not gonna do a fire up on this part because I need to get the drive shaft done. But this will do it for this video. We got it all done. I'll take care of the coolant. I tightened up the B positive on the alternator off camera. So we're good to go here. So I will see you on the next one.